Good afternoon. I'm Ted Jenkins, and I'm the favorite son-in-law married to the favorite daughter, Holly. Jill, I'm just kidding.
I know.
I did write a couple notes just to keep my ADD in check, and I thought I'd share those with you today. As most of you know, all of you know, I'm sure, Doc had the memory of an elephant, and maybe two. He always had a story for everything. If you heard words like, I remember when, or let me tell you a little story about, there was a tale to come, and sit down and enjoy it for 20 minutes, 2 hours. It really never mattered. You gave up the time. Doc talked about life growing up during the Great Depression, as Robert said. Most of you don't know, he actually worked 2 hours before school most days and an hour and a half after school every afternoon. He had stories that were really common across them. He worked. He was a grinder. He never expected any form of handout from anyone. He believed in self-reliance, and that showed. When his stories were told, they always, or typically, had a lesson behind it. You're right, Jill, some of those, or Suzanne, those stories came along, and some we can't tell over scotch and cigars, but they were wonderful. He spoke of his Navy experiences in world travel, his medical education, and certainly the radiology practice. And of course, the relationships he developed over his lifetime of 85 years with people like you. Many of his stories revolved around this house. He was never boastful about where he lived, but certainly very proud that he lived on this river and that he could bring his kids up here. It's a big reason he stayed here, and frankly, it's a big reason we're here today. For his grandchildren, Poppy's keepers, his stories have always been a way to teach an important lesson about integrity, honesty, the meaning and value of hard work, of successes, of failures, and of course, the enduring friendships. His stories were also a way for his children and grandchildren to connect and honor their mother and grandmother who quietly stayed forever in his heart. Poppy could tell you with great detail about the building of this house over 40 years ago. As an example, he used to talk about this seawall behind me, as if it were yesterday, describing in great detail with clarity how he chose coquina rock over any other seawall design because he wanted something lasting, something durable. He said he wanted something to last a lifetime, beyond his lifetime, and they have. Walking off the dock 2 weeks ago, after he died, I looked at that same wall, that same seawall, and it struck me that this seawall was the perfect metaphor for Doc. Stable, reliable, protective. Designed with integrity and built for purpose. So, to his many friends, partners, nephews, nieces, and others that we may have missed that are here, I will tell you that he invested in your friendship through the time he spent with you, and certainly the time he spent talking about you, and it was a lot. You knew he was thinking about you often because he met you each morning and many afternoons. He cut articles out for you. He wrote in the margins something very personal and he passed it on. He sent coupons to you. He bought you 25-cent books from the library and said, just throw it away if you don't want to read it. I don't care. And you knew where you stood with him. Doc had high standards, uncompromised values, both in his personal and certainly his professional life. A description we've heard very often, really over the last 2 weeks, is just that. He listened to you. He traveled with many of you, drank scotch and smoked cigars with you. He spoke often about you. Like any good friend, he likely cried with some of you. He was always there for you, and you knew that. There could be no better friend. It was your seawall. to Poppy's keepers. His 9 grandchildren that he loved unconditionally. He was there for you. Baptisms, school events, ski trips, Easter Sundays, Christmases, and of course your birthdays. You could count on the birthday card, showing up every year, never late, and always with a handwritten note. And then he would call you later that night and sing you happy birthday. We were proud of that voice. But it wasn't the check you wanted, and it wasn't what you cared the most about. It was the pumpkin scone or the poppers or the bag of M&Ms that he chased down just for you. It was the time riding alone in the convertible, holding your hand as you walked in the coffee shop or sitting next to him at dinner. You felt good and secure just seeing him in his favorite chair when you got home. He spoke to you like adults and expected a lot from you, and you respected that. He used to tell you, as Jill said, the harder you work, the luckier you will get. And he absolutely lived that life, and he passed that on, we hope, to our grandchildren. You knew that he never wanted to disappoint him, and so you worked hard. And he left you with stories, his wisdom, his examples of character, and what it means to have integrity. You must never forget these. He was your seawall. To his 4 children, despite your haggling, certainly friendly over who was his favorite, you were all his favorite. And nothing was more important than his family. Like many parents, in your early years, he and Nancy took you everywhere. Like few parents, they didn't complain. This is what they wanted to do. You were his entire focus. His passion, and you knew that. Your big hearts came from your mom, and your quiet discipline from your dad. He didn't need to be loud for you to listen. He coached by example, and you learned. He used to say, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. He was both. After your mom passed away, he found another gear. He quietly dedicated himself to take on much of her role, as much as he could. He was there for advice, financial help when you needed it, and certainly a voice of reason in troubled times. He never complained, but he always had hope. He was the link that kept the 4 of you connected for all these years. He may have left you, but he left you with each other. He would want you to remain that way, and he died peacefully, knowing you would. He could not have been more proud of you, and you could not have asked for a better father. He was stable, reliable, protective, designed with integrity and built with purpose. He was your seawall. Amen.